Hello, and on behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, How to Secure Your vSphere Environment with VMware Disaster Recovery as a Service, presented by William Bell, Executive Vice President of Products for PhoenixNAP. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the global VMUG program. Before we begin, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link, so keep an eye out for that. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions should be entered into the question window near the bottom of your GoToWebinar screen. Third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please make sure to take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. Attendees from today's webcast who opted in at registration will be entered into a drawing to win a $200 Amazon gift card. A representative from PhoenixNAP will email the winner directly following the webcast today, so good luck. All right, let's get started. William, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about something that we were working on with VMware for the last about 2 years, kind of planning and bringing a service like this to market. We're going to talk a little bit about infrastructure security, why it's important, specifically as it pertains to the hypervisor. We're going to talk about some of the threats that some of you guys are facing as you manage some of these environments. And we'll really kind of work all that through to really try to understand what are your options out there to kind of get a native integration and protection of your VMware vSphere data. So for those of you that have no clue who we are, we've been around a long time, so hopefully it's getting fewer and fewer. But PhoenixNAP was one of the first 6 VMware Cloud providers back in 2011. Since that time, we have been working diligently to build a global deployment of VMware Cloud services and other auxiliary infrastructure services. And we've really kind of been making a name for ourselves in the infrastructure security and availability space. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. And I promise I'll get you lots of education and keep the vendor stuff to a minimum. So just that kind of last housekeeping slide, if you wonder kind of where we're at, what do we mean by a global? This is what that looks like today, and we're constantly working on adding more locations and trying to expand that footprint. So a little bit for everybody out there. All right, so our friends at Spiceworks have taken some time to put together a few of the major virtualization trends kind of going into 2020. Probably most of it's not super new for everybody on this call. Storage virtualization is just, you know, taking the market by storm. There's 100 vendors out there. What I'll say when I look at that and I think about infrastructure security, you know, what we find is that there are a lot of vendors implementing software-defined storage packages that are young, that are not mature, that don't have the QA and the workloads behind them. Not only does that create an availability problem, but it can actually create a security problem. So, you know, I stress, you know, kind of staying vigilant and being careful and making sure that you're doing a lot of vendor due diligence. VMware has a great technology. We leverage vSAN for a lot of our services. And, you know, we see kind of things moving towards you know, the standard containers, but you know, multi-tenant container deployments, containers on virtualization, I think is really big. For those of you that went to VMworld last year, the curriculum was dominated with cloud native applications delivered on VMware and making a lot of strides in that area. I'll also kind of note, you know, as you look at all this kind of uptick in decision making that's happening around virtualization, you know, we're starting to become so familiar with the technologies that people are making a lot of grandiose assumptions about what is value add and what is just a given, right? And we use the word commodity here, but there's a lot of expectations in the market that hypervisors are secure. You don't have to do anything. Everything's going to be good. Just run it on VMware or a competitor, and that'll be a great base for my security. And we tend to kind of just look past a lot of the infrastructure security stuff that I'm going to talk about today, just to make sure that we're really kind of staying up to date on the latest happenings from an information security perspective. I am going to stop to mention, I love questions. So anybody who wants to ping one in there, ask technical questions, I absolutely can do that. Looks like some people have, said that it's difficult to understand some of the voices. So hopefully that's an isolated issue. It looks good on my end, so we'll just kind of keep marching on. As we start thinking about infrastructure security and doing the basics, making sure you've got the basics kind of taken care of. We as operators and engineers, we tend sometimes to fall down pretty hard on the basics, and sometimes that's our fault. Sometimes it's budget, right? Whatever the reason is, but when I see a number like 31% of businesses are running out-of-date versions of VMware, vSphere, ES6i, that's dangerous, right? It's dangerous because there are a ton of availability enhancements, there are a ton of security enhancements, a ton of patches that have come, and for one reason or another, a large part of our community is stuck, right? And we gotta work together to kind of get out of that. So you gotta start thinking about ways to kind of get past some of these end of life, end of support versions, making sure you get those upgrades done. There are a ton of options out there. We're not going to talk about all those today, but there are a ton of both CapEx based and buying new infrastructure and OpEx based solutions out there to consume new vSphere technologies, new VMware bundled technologies. So I stress that everyone kind of take a look at that. When you look at the security features that VMware has been building into the hypervisor over the last probably like 10 years or so, and really ramping up heavily in the last 5, the hypervisor has become an important partner to securing the infrastructure and underlying infrastructure. And I'm sure all of you have gone through the various kind of side channel attack stuff that's gone on with Intel and even to some extent from AMD. Some of the predictive, placement and memory placement stuff that's going on. And VMware has been a great partner to Intel and others to help remediate some of these issues. And in some cases, they need each other, right? It's something that can't be fixed because the hypervisor is so in tune with the infrastructure without actually, a patch from both vendors, right? And specifically, most of the stuff from Intel required both a VMware patch and an Intel microcode patch. So there's a lot going on there. And then I think that the thing we're going to talk about the most today is having a great marketplace and community around data protection and availability is super important, right? And we see that has been I'm not going to name any other vendor names, but some of those upstart hyperconverged vendors struggled mightily to get support from the market, from the partner community to build solutions around data protection, data availability, and give customers a lot of choice. And I truly think that kind of held back some of the adoption, right? And so as you look at virtualization, specifically hypervisor technology, a lot of people look at data protection and availability as well as maturity and security as being a really important part of the portfolio and the solution that they're buying or consuming and the place that they want to put their data. So all those kind of major considerations are at the forefront with these technologies. So what does this look like? As we get towards security, and we get through some of the research that's been done, a lot of this in the data that's being presented here is mostly around people's not only what attacks exist, but also what people are most worried about as it applies to specific attack vectors, right? And so anytime you're talking about the hypervisor, the world is focused on, whatever term you want to use, VM escape, cloud bursting, you pick the name, right? But effectively, I do something in a guest OS and it affects the underlying server infrastructure and hypervisor, right? I somehow get some control of the hypervisor and I'm able to do any untold nefarious thing at that point. That's a major point of contention. And I would say that VMware spends a lot of time on the hypervisor hardening and making sure that that doesn't happen. And there is a very short list of true hypervisor VM kind of escape vulnerabilities that have happened over the entire tenure of the ESXi GSX framework. So as you look at all that, I would say it's something to think about. It's something to be kind of aware of, but it's probably on the lower risk side. And as you get through some of these things, I see most of the issues that happen with virtualization are specifically the hypervisor are due to poor configuration and mostly are of a denial of service nature. And what we see a lot of with our customers is our excessive traffic spikes taking down access to storage, as an example. So they don't separate their storage network physically from their data path. And if you don't make that careful design configuration or consideration, which does cost more, it's more ports, you run the risk of basically not only taking out the data path side, but taking out the available bandwidth to connect the storage, and then your virtual machine's toast at that point, right? It's blue screen and or read-only mode on Linux side, and things get bad. And then, trying to communicate between VMs, a lot of this kind of side channel attack stuff and memory space collision stuff was really looking at that. It's more like data stealing from shared infrastructure than it is an actual I've taken control of the hypervisor and I'm doing that. Where people really should be putting all their time and effort, right? And I think it doesn't get the kind of the focus that it should these days, because what we have what we have seen is everyone thinks of malware and antivirus and the basics as being kind of passe and boring and not for my server or whatever. And we see people, mostly administrators, making poor decisions and browsing the internet from a server, and all of a sudden things have gone very bad for you. And not only the server that was infected first, but all the servers that other VM can speak to, right? We see a lot of that. I mentioned denial of service attacks. What we actually see a lot of is just kind of dormant VMs and things that were created for dev tests, whatever it is, they just get exposed and left exposed by accident to something, maybe not the internet, but some type of unsecured system. And then all of a sudden things have, again, gone horribly. Not patching, right? People, you have to keep up with your patching. You have to keep up with the basic tenets of data security to get, kind of your posture correct, right? As you look at the rest of the stuff, you start to see, really kind of not low impact, high impact, but very, very low risk type areas where the risk of compromise is low, but it's something to kind of think about as you kind of move forward. Also, these slides are provided in the handout section, so anybody can go grab this, kind of peruse it on your own, and I'll be available for questions not only at the end of this, but in perpetuity. If you guys want to reach out, we can have a conversation. So what does this look like from our perspective? What do you need to do to kind of say, I've got the basics in place to protect my data and my VMs and my data by proxy, right? You have to use some type of endpoint protection. You just have to, right? I know it sounds, horrible to think about antivirus running on server infrastructure and, potentially affecting performance and things like that. But not only could you probably not pass any compliance effort that you may go through if without it, but it's just generally a good idea. Is it bulletproof? Absolutely not, right? Can it protect you from, the stupid little things that can really hurt? Yes, it can. Being diligent about your access, not only firewall network access, but administrative access, user account control, things like that. That is, in that top 5 security considerations. VMware and its partners have been working so diligently to deliver network security as a design by default, in the ecosystem with NSX, and it's becoming easier and easier and easier to consume. If you don't have the budget to purchase it, there's a cloud provider out there that will give it to you as a service, right? It will allow you to move your workload to a cloud that does have a ton of these network security and network configuration technologies with the NSX platform. I think the one thing that I look at, not only internally inside of our organizations of our customers, but also with cloud providers, is people don't spend a lot of time on hardware security. They don't spend a lot of time making sure that the physical iron that they've put this fancy hypervisor on and their data is secure. And I'm talking about all kinds of stuff, from IPMI access to various types of remote protocols that exist inside of the chips themselves, leveraging technologies that exist in the infrastructure, like the Trusted Platform module that's been there forever, although it's been enhanced over the last few years. Making sure that you're doing your due diligence to keep your data safe. And we love to see people kind of taking that even a step further than they think might be necessary, because it can be the critical safety net that you're looking for to ensure that data doesn't just disappear, which is everyone's worst nightmare. Basic system monitoring and alerting, right? You have to have it. You have to have some framework in place to understand changes in your environment and changes in not only your application performance, but your system performance, network performance, because a lot of times this is a critical choke point and or critical information point for you to understand if a security event has happened, right? So having all that on point, having it really nailed down in your environment, not only the kind of up-down alerting type capabilities, but also your logging and your ability to search those logs, and then your integration with security and event information systems, right? All of that completes the picture from a system monitoring alerting perspective to make sure that everything is as secure as possible going into the landscape that's out there today, which is absolutely crazy. I've been in the information security field, either directly or by proxy, for well over 15 years. And I can tell you that the attacks have become so sophisticated that, it's hard for anyone, let alone smaller businesses that have really critical data, to combat some of these issues. It's not your, get your antivirus and you're done of yesteryear. You have to take a lot of steps to make sure your data's safe. And then I left the best part for last, right? So the best part of this is, hey, look, if everything fails, you may have compromised data. The last point, backup and disaster recovery, won't stop a data leakage event or data compromise event. But what it can absolutely stop is a data deletion event, right? Where you physically lose your data, whether that's physically deleted maliciously or through some type of ransomware that has just locked you out of your data. A clean tested backup in an offsite location, or the ability to fail over an environment to a known good state, yesterday, and continue running, can absolutely save you. It absolutely can save you. It is the kind of center mass protection of all data, is making sure that you have a good, clean backup. And a lot of vendors, our partner community, VMware, their ecosystem, the likes of Veeam and Zerto and others, have spent a lot of time to make sure that security is well integrated into the whole portfolio around backup and offsite data protection. All right. So I'm going to get down to some of this meat and potatoes of what this, what the VMware-based technologies look like. And so, as we look at, why is it key to ensuring that the data is safe? And I've got an auto advance on here. I apologize for that for everybody. Try to go back. Disaster recovery is going to keep this kind of 24/7 play, DVR-like capability in your hands to play back the data protection. I'm going to let that go and just kind of talk to some of it. Making sure that you have a good solution, a good copy of the data, you've tested it. It's extremely important to test your backups, test all of your data protection technologies, right? And as you look at all the solutions that are available today for customers to implement offsite data protection, it's like no-brainer stuff. The yesteryear, when I was, running large environments, our only option was buy a second version, maybe slightly degraded from a performance level, hopefully only to the application set that was most critical, stick it somewhere in a co-location environment, license everything, right? Pay for data replication technologies, replicate all my data, and hope I got it right. And weirdly enough, hope I never had to use it. Spend all that money and then hope I never had to use it. And so we don't do that in normal lives, right? Like, if you have a car, you have insurance for your car. You don't buy a second car that sits there just hoping that in the event you get into a wreck, you have another car available for you. Like, that's not a human thing to do. But when it came to data protection, we took the stance for a long time, and a lot of it was technically driven. It was very hard to do some of the stuff that you can do today from a technical delivery perspective. But we still see organizations going out and taking the DIY approach. I'm going to go buy everything twice, stick it somewhere, replicate all my data to it, and then pray that I never fail over, because that's not going to be perfect, right? That it's not going to be a perfect event, right? Why should you look at a cloud provider for executing your DR strategy, right? What it gives you the ability to do is share in the cost of a potential issue with people like you. This is exactly what we do every single day with insurance, with car insurance, right? You take this approach of I have an insurance policy, and if something goes wrong, they'll help me out, and you pay for your friend down the street and his friend and his friend. Everybody kind of pays for the insurance together. It's a little bit different in the fact that you're not just getting money, you're getting a technical solution, but the same principle applies. You have the ability to take like-minded technical requirements and target a shared environment that allows you to fail over when you need it. And it's wrapped with strong SLAs that help you, execute on protecting your data every single day. So I think that it's something that a lot of people are looking at. I know for a fact that we get probably the majority of our inquiries are around data protection of some type, whether that's offsite backups or or live replication. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what specific VMware solutions now exist to help make this a reality. So we worked with VMware and other partners to build a solution that provides a native VMware replication technology to a cloud-based service where you can live replicate your virtual machines to a cloud provider, and you can do all this with no added VMware licensing. So as long as you have standard vCenter or I think it's vSphere Essentials on top of that, you can leverage the technology that we have at our fingertips to replicate your VMs to one of our cloud-based services. And in up to, I think we have 4 regions today live with the VMware vCloud availability technology. So you get this great VMware native. You don't have to buy any new solutions. We deliver it as a service where you pay solely for the amount of data that you're storing and the number of VMs you're protecting. And it makes it very, very cost effective. And if you look at the cost metrics around parking something somewhere and hoping you never use it versus sharing in the compute environment of your fellow man, right? It helps enable a huge cost savings over time. And in the past, you had to go buy a third-party solution, whether that was Zerto or Veeam, or work with a cloud provider like me that had those solutions where we bundled in the licensing. But what VMware has done is they've made it possible for us to have a solution that is legit, just an OVA that you install in your environment, the VMware vCloud availability OVA. It allows you to instantly access a portal where inside your environment, you can choose what data you want to protect, what VMs you want to protect, and natively replicate it to our vCloud Director-based cloud service. So, and this technology called vSphere Replication Manager kind of takes care of a lot of the underpinnings of that. For those that have asked about VMware Site Recovery, there's some SRM-like technologies that are in here, but this unfortunately doesn't integrate with Site Recovery Manager. But what it does do is it provides a cloud-based DR solution that doesn't require SRM, right? It doesn't require you to replicate the data. It also doesn't require specific storage integration, anything of that nature. You can use, as long as you have vSphere and vCenter in your environment and you have VMware-based data that you want to protect, you can replicate that data live with pretty impressive RPO RTO, right? Sub 15-minute RPO if you give it enough bandwidth. Your RTO can be as little as 5 minutes. We have some SLAs around how much data you can activate at once and meet certain RTOS recovery time objectives. But when you look at the solution as a whole, everything's pretty impressive. If I told you that you could get started and replicating in, the same day that we kind of have a conversation and we settle on, what kind of pool of resources you need, right? You can have it configured in sub 24 hours, probably sub 4 hours. And if you were to fail over, if you've done your job and you've mapped your applications and you've mapped your firewall rules and all the things you need to connect to that environment, you've got your playbook set up, you've got everything kind of spinning up in the right order, you can have a pretty impressive recovery time objective. And like I said, a really, really good recovery point objective, right? As long as you're able to give it enough bandwidth to the cloud. So that's, yeah. So yeah, I think somebody asked, is this a cloud solution that checks similar boxes to SRM? Absolutely, right? So VMware basically has realized that selling SRM as a standalone product, asking their customers to go buy more hosts, more storage, more network, right? Waiting for them to do all of that to get the data protection that VMware understands that their customers need, it takes a long time to execute, and a lot of companies just say, we don't have the budget for it. And so as you look at the available solutions out there, VMware is pushing really, really hard on this technology because they see it as one of their kind of future checkboxes, right? Will SRM ever go away? Possibly, or it will be re-envisioned as something else. There's always going to be a need for some customers to protect data in a way that is so substantially, data resident that, you may have to continue to keep solutions like that around. But we find that well over 80% of customers that we talk to don't have an actual critical need to keep their disaster recovery environment in-house, and don't have the budget to do so, even if they have the desire to do so. So that's kind of the critical decision points as you look at all that. So we kind of walk through this. You deploy that on-prem appliance, you set up your replication policies effectively, you log into your our VMware vCloud Director portal. You can see your replicated application sets. You can create all of the necessary network plumbing to ensure that your environment operates the same way it does on-prem in the cloud, right? You have to take care of some of the WAN side of that equation. You have to be able to ensure your applications and your consumers understand that the data has moved in some capacity. Sometimes that's just as easy, that's as simple as a DNS-based failover. Sometimes it's more complicated than that. Sometimes there's complex VPNs, but we work with you to kind of get you through that whole process to understand all the things you got, what needs to be configured, and then the key to all of this is being able to perform those test failovers and make sure it's ready when the time comes, right? So what we do is we allow our customers to do a test failover per year for free. They can run it for up to 7 days. And on top of that, if you have an event where you declare a failover, a true failover, we allow you to run for 7 days with no added cost. So you can take up our compute, leverage our VMware environment, our network, all those controls, run your production workload live in a cloud-based environment for 7 days, no charge. And then after that, we're only putting together a weekly kind of bill for you. And then we're hoping you fill back. If you want to stay, we have ways to handle that. But most customers they have their data on-prem for a reason, or in a different location at minimum for a reason, and they want to try to ultimately fail back. And we try to make that as seamless and flexible as possible. You can reverse replication. You can make that kind of failover happen again during a maintenance window. There's a ton of ways to kind of handle that. Yeah, so the vCloud instance is available for testing at will. One of the people asked about that. You can perform a failover. You can basically trigger it yourself. We ask that for testing-based purposes that you tell us ahead of time, just so we understand and we can account for the test, and we also can help you through anything that didn't go the way you expected it to. And yeah, so we don't charge you at all for those 7 days during your testing events or 7 days post failover. So I think that's a pretty industry-leading position in the market. And our friends at VMware have helped us kind of execute on some of that. So somebody asked, and we'll kind of get to some of the technical questions. Keep them coming, right? As technical as you want to get. This technology is not Site Recovery Manager. This technology is something called VMware vCloud Availability. It has a lot of the underpinnings of SRM. What I can tell you as it relates to Veeam replication, right? It just so happens that we're one of the largest Veeam Cloud Connect providers in the world as well. And so we have a lot of experience specifically kind of comparing and contrasting VMware, we call it vCAV, VMware vCloud Availability, and Veeam Cloud Connect replication. And what we see in that is the vCloud Availability technologies replication subsystem is today superior to Veeam's subsystem of replication, which is purely snapshot based today. Now, everybody's working to the same place. Continuous change block tracking replication, right? There are other technologies out there that we support that are even better at this. They cost a ton more, right? And so we think that VMware with vCloud availability has hit the sweet spot that's really hard to get to. Really good, maybe not the best in the market, but really good replication technology, failover, orchestration technology, and then highly cost effective at the same time. And those two things are really hard to get right. So that's kind of what we see in the market today. So if your RPO is pretty low, sub an hour, maybe 2 hours, you probably want to look at a solution like this versus Veeam, because what you don't want to do is snapshot constantly, your VMware environment, take that performance hit from doing so. It doesn't work out well for you, right? If you try to snapshot too often, especially on high change rate VMs. And so we look at solutions like this as kind of a best of breed middle ground for purely replication based stuff. Now, what vCav will not do for you is purely offsite backups. So it doesn't have any kind of capability to do a standard backup schedule and take an offsite backup. So you have to kind of look at your needs and what those look like, mix and match the solution that best fits your environment. So I think that that's something that we walk you through. That's part of working with us, and what makes us different is we're going to help you kind of through that. We use a lot of these technologies internally. We deliver them as a service to customers, and I think that we provide a superior kind of view of the market in the industry because of how many different capabilities we're delivering on and our experience in delivering those technical solutions. Not only do we offer this kind of shared DRaaS environment, but I think that the key to this whole thing for us is we're an infrastructure as a service company, right? We're not an MSP. We don't handle a lot of the traditional MSP-like activities. We're not going to help you with your application configurations. It's not what we do as a company, but we build a lot of building blocks that help you figure out exactly what you need to best fit your solution. So on top of this kind of shared infrastructure mentality, we also have a variety of varying levels of shared infrastructure, all the way to single tenant VMware vSphere based cloud services that can take replication natively if you're just looking to get out of the CapEx side. If you still say, I want dedicated infrastructure, I want it to be mine, I want to have full control, we deliver on that. It's not the VMware DRaaS solution that we've talked about, but we have solutions to fit that as well that can help you a lot with data protection and data privacy if you have severe compliance concerns with data residency. All right, so I'm gonna take some time to kind of walk through some questions. I hope this has been valuable for you guys, and I think that hopefully through some of the questions that we're gonna go through, you get a chance to get yours answered. If you don't, please reach out to us. We've got a ton of resources at your disposal. I'll also mention again that we put a lot of stuff into the handouts area, so you can download a bunch of those takeaways and solve some of the nagging parts about being on a webinar. Someone asked for us to recap the basic building blocks of what a solution like this looks like, right? So what we're typically looking at is we want to understand your VMware environment. We want to understand how many VMs you have, what kind of profile they look like. We want to understand what type of compute resources you're using today. Make sure we have something that's highly compatible or that isn't going to degrade your application. And then we will map that out. But when it comes to what you're paying for, the storage is always going to take up storage. You replicate your data, it's going to sit on an array inside of one of our locations, and it's going to take up space. So there's going to be a charge for that. And then there's a per VM fee that is basically your share of the compute infrastructure and the necessary kind of management and licensing that goes into keeping the environment available for all of our customers. And so those two things together are the determining factors of cost. And I think if you do get a chance to reach out, I'm not in sales, I'm a product guy. I want you to come try the product because I think it's the best thing, one of the best things that we have, and I think it's really cool and it's a cool technical solution. But if you are talking to our sales team, it comes down to number of VMs and number of terabytes of storage that you want to protect. That's it. It makes it very simple to add. You can kind of pay as you grow, and build a solution that meets your needs across any of the 4 locations that we offer. So I think that's makes it really simple. One of the people was asking again about licensing and how it works. Is there's no extra software license. It's completely delivered by PhoenixNAP to you as a customer, and as long as you have a vCenter standard and I think vSphere Essentials, it will work. It's a tiny OVA. It sits in your environment. You import it just like any other VM. It accesses vCenter and it leverages vCenter as a proxy for data replication. It's using vCenter to talk to the vSphere hosts, and like many different replication and data protection technologies, it uses vCenter as kind of common API to orchestrate the replication of data. It is using some various newer technologies for accessing the data. It isn't snapshot based. It is using I believe it's not SRIOV, but the name's escaping me by now. But there was a new technology that was built into vSphere 6 that it is leveraging to do that replication. It does require vSphere. Sorry, it was built into vSphere 5.5, and it requires vSphere 5.5 or newer. So we can help you if you're down at 5.5. We can't help you if you're at 5.0. If you missed the beginning of this presentation, I talked a lot about making sure that you don't get stuck in yesteryear. So yeah, do everything you can to kind of get to a modern hypervisor, and then we have a lot of tricks up our sleeve once you can get into an environment that's cool, that's compatible with the environment that we deploy. The other best part about technologies that you might highly compatible with NSX, if you've made that purchasing decision to do NSX on-prem, we can execute on all the same policy constructs in our cloud-based services. So they're not going on there that are kind of too deep for this presentation. But if you want to understand how it would look, please, by all means, reach out. VDI linked clones. Someone asked about VDI linked clones and whether or not you can use this technology with VDI linked clones. I will note your name and I will get one of our team to reach out with that answer. I actually don't know, so bad on me. I believe it does work with VDI linked clones. If not, we have a ton of other solutions that definitely will, that are, again, they're based on different technologies. But we can do that. I will say the one thing with VDI, if you're using VMware View, you would have to replicate into a single tenant environment because the View components themselves are not multi-tenant. Something we've been pushing on with VMware for a while, but it definitely makes things a little bit more complex if you're trying to do DR for VDI instances. Another thing we find a lot of is that the VDI environment isn't always the most critical environment for replication. A lot of times it's mostly server applications that are feeding some type of external data source. They're willing to take, if something critical happens, they're willing to take the hit internally in productivity. What they don't want to do is take the external hit of my service is down. Whatever that service you provide to your customer is down. And if it is kind of client access model, a lot of companies have your traditional backup laptops and things like that, or physical systems for critical infrastructure, maybe production floor and things like that. If you're in a production environment or a mechanical-based environment. Well, we've made it through all the questions. I want to thank everybody for being so engaging I love to actually talk to the folks on the call and really understand what their challenges look like. I urge you guys to reach out to us. Let's talk through your environment. If it's not a good fit, we're really good about telling you. So please, if you have any technical questions, feel free to reach out. You can find me pretty easy on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. I am always on those environments, so you can reach out there or call into our sales team, and they will definitely get in touch with me, and we can set up and have a call. So with that, I'll turn it back to Julie, our fabulous VMUG host, and thank you again for helping keep VMUG alive and being a participant in today's webinar.
Well, thank you, William, for taking the time to speak to us today. As a reminder to our audience, today's raffle winner will be notified by PhoenixNAP after this webcast. You will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast as well. To find out more about the VMUG webcast program, visit vmug.com and check out the education page. Please make sure to complete the short online evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webcast, and let us know how today's session went. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.